We are going to flip over to the federal level right now and talk to a candidate for Congressional District 4, which encompasses a great fillet of California with a lot of altitude and a lot of beauty. And let's welcome Brynne Kennedy.
Thank you so much, Nara. Thank you, Susan. Thank you to everyone who's here today. I am Brynne Kennedy, and I am a businesswoman and a candidate for Congress in California's 4th District. I'm running against far-right Republican Tom McClintock, who some of you may remember from his prior time in politics in Ventura County in the state legislature. He's run for every job in California, and this year is very vulnerable. So I actually, ironically, spent much of my life pretty far from politics. I spent 15 years working in the private sector, most of it at a company I started at my kitchen table and grew to operate all over the world. We help people connect to jobs in communities like ours outside of cities and all over. So that is very, very relevant for what we're going through with COVID today. But also, I really know a lot about and appreciate the innovation economy and the opportunity for new businesses in spaces like cannabis to create jobs, to do good, and to be the backbone of innovation in our country and communities like ours. So thank you for having me today.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. Our first question that we're asking everybody is, what is your favorite cannabis product, favorite way to consume, favorite strain, favorite cannabis story? You can answer any of them or all of them.
Sure. Well, I personally actually am not a cannabis user myself, but I do have a very personal experience with cannabis because my mother is a 2-time cancer survivor. And after her chemo, she was left with latent neuropathy in her joints, her feet, and her hands for many years, actually. And one of the things that really helped with that was cannabis products. So very much appreciate the need for patients and, more broadly, the recreational use of cannabis.
Okay. And when she was going through her treatments, was she smoking cannabis, or were you able to do like a what kind of a product was helpful for her? Just for
it's actually after the chemo. So she had, many years of tingling in her hands and feet and, the neuropathy that often lasts for years after the cancer is tackled. And I know that the oils were very helpful and some of the gummies as well.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I was just talking about that with Melissa. Her husband's been using a tincture for several, and I was talking about my mother-in-law's survivor of 3C lung cancer, and we used a caramel for the chemo side effects.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So
always great. I mean, I think it's one of the only things that helps, and I mean, I know for neuropathy it was one of the only things that helped at all.
That's great. So what do you think is, or what do you think of the current state of cannabis?
I think it's fragmented and inefficient and expensive and curtails a lot of opportunities for new businesses, for patients, and for recreational use. I mean, one of the things my campaign is really about is putting aside these, what I believe are sort of false definitions of big or small government or right or left, but really just looking at how do you design smart policies, remove duplicative regulation, unleash our economy, our small businesses, help real people in the real world, as I call it, because I think politicians often forget that. And so I think the cannabis industry, the current state is it's just over-regulated. A lot of it's very duplicative and fragmented between the state and the federal level. There's a lot of, taxes that push business into the black market, which isn't really good for anyone. And so I'm a big supporter of just streamlining the whole industry, streamlining the banking services, and making sure that we can have businesses thrive, help patients, and build the recreational market.
Great. So how do you think that that you'd be able to affect the changes that that you'd like to see for the state of cannabis from the House of Representatives?
Well, firstly, I support the federal decriminalization of marijuana. I think we need that across all 50 states. We need the consistency across the country, and I'll work on that. I also am a big believer, as a businesswoman, obviously you can't really run a business without capital, access to banking services, access to loans and investors. And I know that there are some sort of venture capital investors and private investors in the cannabis space, but we must unlock traditional banking services for cannabis in all 50 states. I do support also a close partnership with the local governments for them to design their zoning and what works for their community. And I talk a lot with our local elected officials about that. But at the federal level, we've got to get those two things solved to, I think, support the industry.
Okay. Um, so you're running against Congressman McClintock, who is certainly far right on many issues. Has actually been an advocate for cannabis, and so I wonder, being an advocate for cannabis and maybe bring how you would bring in some of those other things to be a better representative.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the difference between me and McClintock is that he's actually never lived in the world of running a business or doing innovation because he's been in government his whole career. Literally, he started running for office down in LA right after college, and he's been in government longer than the internet has been around. What I bring is the practical experience of, being an entrepreneur myself, understanding how punitive high taxes are and high regulation is when you're trying to do something in an innovative fashion. And also, I think being of a generation that really embraces cannabis as as a broader part of the economy, and that is the fundamental difference between the two of us. I will be an advocate, but I also bring practical experience and an understanding of innovation as it relates to our economy.
Yeah. You have both Calaveras and El Dorado County and some of the traditional markets for growing cannabis, and then also some of the counties where regulation has been, I would say, unfair, uneven, or law enforcement, and the counties don't seem to get together. I wonder whether you could talk about how you could imagine bridging some of those divides or helping in your district itself that does have some of those very traditional markets. And I know a lot of folks trying to get their grows legalized.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very large and diverse district. We have all are part of 10 counties. So as you can imagine, there's very different local economies and very different local representation in each of the counties. We do have Calaveras and El Dorado and Amador as well, where there are a lot of businesses starting in the cannabis space. There's been a big embrace of it. In one of our counties, there's a little bit of a false start. I think it became a little too wild west for the local population. But we do have that, and then we also, as you do point out, have some high regulation areas. I think this all comes down to partnership. One of the things that's very stark about McClintock, my opponent, is he really doesn't show up. He doesn't live in our district. He doesn't do public events, and he doesn't really have strong relationships with a lot of the local elected officials. I have the support of 75 local elected officials. I have the support of the longest standing sheriff in our largest county. And I actually live in our community. And I very much believe in breaking down those silos between different levels of government, regardless of what party you're in. So I think that communication and kind of understanding how duplicative regulation can impact the economy and the general public is a key thing that I bring that has been really lacking in our community.
That's been pretty interesting watching some of our left folks, and I'm always the one like tax, but it's watching what actually happened under these taxation, the state taxes, the local taxes, and then, on top of the local sales taxes and the fees, to apply at both the state and the local level have gotten sort of out of control. And, areas like yours in California that it never felt very political there. It was not so much Democrat or Republican. It was maybe just leave me alone. A big sense of that. So I do think you're certainly talking to your your district, and that's pretty clear. And
this is honestly what happens. The overtaxing and overregulating of the cannabis industry is an example of what happens when you have people in government who have never worked in the private sector. It's very easy to sit in Sacramento or in Washington and sort of create bills or talk about things. It's a heck of a lot harder to actually have to run the business or do the innovation in an environment like that. And, when you have run a business, you understand that if you go past a particular point, it goes to the black market. If you overregulate, people go somewhere else. Those are all experiences that I've seen firsthand. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to run, honestly, because I did some policy work. I was invited to Washington to do that around the economy and the innovation economy. And I was just horrified in the meetings, honestly. I mean, I just thought, my goodness, how is it possible that we are having folks, weigh in on the future of these industries and the future of our country and our economy, who have never walked in the shoes and really fight with each other instead of fight for small businesses and for real people.
Yeah, I think that's got a lot to do too with needing a new generation of
Yes.
people serving in elected office. People for whom the effects of Social Security and climate change are real for us and our kids.
Yeah.
Great. I think we're getting towards the end here, so I was going to give you a chance to, if you would please drop your website and any other info you want people to have into the chat, and then if you want to give us a closing, argument, wrapping up anything that we talked about today.
Well, thank you all so much for having me. My race is a perfect example of a choice. Our choice is a career politician who is a deep partisan, who has been in government longer than politics, longer than the internet, versus a businesswoman who has seen innovation firsthand, who has seen where our economy is going, and who did not grow up in a political party. I am all about real people, real opportunity, and moving our community and country forward. And if you want a deep partisan, that is not me. I am a staunch Democrat, but I am all about representing everyone, bringing people together. And I'm very proud of the fact that I think I have the broadest base of ideological support. I challenge you to find further. So this is a perfect example of an industry that I want to lead on, create jobs, help patients, and provide more options for the general public.
Cool. Looks like we still may have actually one quick final question, which is I was following this district pretty closely last time around, and would love to hear what you're doing differently, or yeah.
Well, a totally different cycle. Firstly, I've been the only Democrat pretty much from day one, and that has allowed us to really get to know everyone, to earn support, endorsements, donors, voters who are Republicans, Democrats, and independents. I'm very, very proud of that. It is also a very different year. Tom McClintock was the only representative of either party to vote against COVID aid. In California. He was also just last week the only representative of either party from California to vote against the budget to keep the government open. The guy literally wanted to shut the government in the middle of wildfire season, a pandemic, and an economic challenge. So that's not popular locally. So this is a really unique opportunity for us to bring change, bring new ideas, new energy, and turn the page to an era of putting just people in progress ahead of political parties and silly performances like he does.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time today, and good luck. And I hope that all the spot fires and fires that were burning around you are starting to come. We're starting to contain them. So yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah. Thanks for being here.